Welcome to our AITA, the place where people walk in expecting validation and leave with a free spiritual diagnosis. Delivered by 3,000 strangers with keyboards, family trauma, and too much time on their hands. Today's post is one of those that starts with "I only wanted to protect my home" and ends with half the family discovering that a boundary is not just a decorative suggestion hanging on the living room wall. Am I the asshole for calling the police on my own children? I'm a 49-year-old woman. I have two sons, Brandon, 22, and Blake, 19. Yes, I know. Two adult men. Two emotional bills with facial hair. Two human beings who, in theory, should already understand that a locked door means do not enter. Not activate your cartoon criminal creativity. For context, I raised my sons pretty much alone after my ex-husband, Benjamin, decided fatherhood was an experimental phase. Like an online course he bought, watched lessons of, then abandoned. He was always the fun dad. The dad who showed up with pizza, video games, movie money, and that smile of a man who never had to say no because there was always an exhausted woman doing the dirty work for him. I was the annoying one. The inspector. The woman who said, "Do your homework. Don't talk to me like that. Don't bring drunk people into the house. Don't use your mother's credit card to buy computer parts." Those modern tyrannies. Basically Mussolini in slippers and a robe. Stopping my sons from fully experiencing the liberating joy of ruining my financial life for years. I let a lot slide. And when I say a lot, I mean my patience became a historical landmark. Brandon was always the more manipulative one. Smart, charming. The kind of person who can break a vase and somehow make you feel guilty for buying fragile porcelain. Blake was more explosive. Less strategy, more wildfire. If Brandon was chaos's attorney, Blake was the brick flying through the window. When they were teenagers, I thought it was a phase. Everyone said that. Boys are like that. What a lovely phrase, right? A social free pass for anything from leaving socks on the couch to treating your mother like a poorly rated hotel employee. Except the phase grew up. Got a driver's license. Learned how to ask for loans. And kept living inside my house like I had signed a lifetime contract with two emotional termites. And here's the first important detail. Brandon hasn't lived with me for 2 years. Blake moved out 6 months ago after a horrible fight where he screamed that I was controlling. Because I asked him to pay his own traffic ticket. Controlling, because apparently, in his world, freedom means driving like an anxious rhinoceros and then sending the bill to mommy. After Blake moved out, I changed the locks. Not out of revenge. Not because I wanted to cut my children out of my life. As my dramatic sister later said in the family group chat, I changed them because they were still coming into my house whenever they wanted. Taking food, tools, clothes, loose cash, even medicine from the cabinet. One time I got home from work and found Brandon asleep on my couch, while two of his friends played video games in my living room using my TV, my Wi-Fi, and my electricity. One of them was eating my Greek yogurt with a fork. A fork. That wasn't a home invasion. That was culinary terrorism. I asked for the keys back. Brandon said he lost his. Blake said I was being paranoid. So I changed the locks. I told both of them. I said clearly, "You are my sons, I love you. But you no longer have permission to enter my house without letting me know and without my approval." Brandon replied with a thumbs up emoji. Blake replied, "Lol, okay, sheriff. Remember that word, sheriff." Because apparently they thought they were in a suburban western. And I was the old saloon owner who needed to learn her place. 2 weeks ago, I had to travel for 3 days to take care of my mother, who had hip surgery. My mother is 76, has a sharp tongue, and shows more dignity after surgery than my sons do in perfect health. Before I left, I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Barbara, to keep an eye on the house. Barbara is 68, has 3 cats, and has a supernatural ability to see everything through her window while never admitting she's spying. A security camera with a perm on the second day of my trip, around 11:40 p.m. My phone started vibrating. It was Barbara. I answered, thinking maybe something had happened to the house. And something had happened. Just not a pipe burst kind of something. More like your sons decided to turn your living room into a war zone. Barbara spoke quietly, like she was narrating a documentary about wild animals. "Dear, there are people in your house." I asked if she was sure. She said, "I am. Unless your floor lamp has learned how to smoke on the porch." I opened the camera app. And there they were. Brandon, Blake, and at least 4 other people entering through the back door. How did they get in? Through the laundry room window, which apparently Blake knew how to unlock with a screwdriver. What a talent. The bandit doesn't earn a diploma, just a police report. At first, I froze. That stupid part of the mother brain still tried to justify it. Maybe they only needed to grab something. Maybe it was an emergency. Maybe the house was on fire and they brought beer to put it out. Motherhood makes you negotiate with absurdity like you're at a street market. Then I saw Blake carrying boxes of alcohol inside. I saw Brandon opening my dish cabinet. I saw a girl I had never seen before sit on my kitchen counter with dirty shoes. I saw someone going into my office, where I keep documents, my computer, insurance papers, work contracts, and a folder with my mother's paperwork. I texted Brandon, "What are you doing in my house?" He saw it, didn't answer. I called. He rejected the call. I called Blake. He answered on speaker, loud music in the background, and said, "Mom, relax. We're just using the space. My house had become a co-working center for delinquents. I told him to send everyone home immediately. Blake laughed and said, "You're not even here. I replied. Exactly why I'm telling you to leave. He said, you always make drama. The house is ours too. And then, dear readers, the blood in my soul coughed. The house is ours too. The house I bought after 12 years of paying the mortgage by myself. The house their father never helped maintain. The house where they don't pay for a single light bulb, don't wash a spoon, and don't even know where the water shut-off valve is? Sure, it's theirs too. Just like the moon is mine because I look at it when I'm sad, I said, Blake, you have 5 minutes to leave or I'm calling the police. He answered, call them. But he said it in that way. That arrogant call them, like I was bluffing. Like I was just an old machine full of empty threats. Like deep down, he knew I would never do it because mothers swallow everything. They swallow disrespect. They swallow guilt. They swallow fear. They swallow their own rage and still ask if their child wants dinner. That was the second hook of the night, though I didn't know it at the time. Because there is a moment when a mother stops asking, where did I go wrong? And starts asking, why am I still allowing them to keep doing wrong to me? I called the police. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't make a speech. I called emergency services, explained that there were people inside my house without authorization, that I was out of town, that I had cameras showing the break-in, and that 2 of the intruders were my adult sons. The operator asked if there were weapons. I said I didn't know. She asked if I wanted officers sent to the property. I said yes. While I waited, I watched through the cameras. It was horrible and strangely educational. If anyone wants to know what it feels like to have a panic attack in high definition, I recommend indoor cameras with audio. They drank. They laughed. One of Brandon's friends opened a bottle of wine I had been saving for years. A gift from a friend who died of cancer. Brandon saw it and said that one must be expensive, and then he let the guy drink it. Blake spilled beer on the living room rug and rubbed it with a pillow. A white pillow. Because, of course, why use paper towels when you can use decor? Then came the part that still makes me want to throw up. One of the girls went into my bedroom. My bedroom. She opened my closet, took one of my coats, put it on, looked at herself in the mirror. Brandon appeared at the door and laughed. He didn't say, hey, get out of there. He didn't say, that's my mother's room. He laughed. Something died inside me there. Not love. Unfortunately, a mother's love is a very stubborn plague. What died was that pathetic fantasy that, deep down, they still respected me. They did it. They respected consequences. And since I almost never gave consequences, I was basically a walking suggestion. When the police arrived, it was chaos. Through the front camera, I saw red and blue lights reflecting in the windows. The music stopped. Someone screamed. Blake went out the back door and tried to jump the fence. Yes, my 19-year-old son tried to run from the police from inside his own mother's house using a fence I had installed because he himself had broken the gate years earlier. The universe's poetry has a very dark sense of humor. Brandon opened the door trying to act like the reasonable adult through the entry camera audio. I heard him say, there must be some mistake. This is our mom's house. The officer asked if their mother was there. Brandon said no. The officer asked if they had permission to be there. Silence. That beautiful silence. That rare silence when a person discovers charm is not a legal document. Blake was brought back by another officer, breathless and furious. He screamed that I was crazy, that I had ruined his life, that I was a horrible mother. A classic. Nothing says I'm innocent like fleeing into the dark and then yelling at the homeowner. The friends were removed. Some received warnings. 2 had fake IDs. 1 had a small amount of drugs in his pocket, which was a surprise to absolutely no one, except maybe the couch, which already looked like it had given up on life. The officers video called me. They asked if I wanted to file an official complaint for trespassing and property damage. At that moment, Brandon started crying. Blake started cursing. And I started shaking, because this is the part that makes me wonder if I'm the asshole. I said yes. I wanted to file. I didn't ask for my sons to be arrested for sport. I wasn't sitting there eating emotional popcorn while Justice tap danced on my porch. But I said I wanted everything documented. I wanted there to be a record. I wanted them to understand that my house was not a hereditary playground. I wanted that night to have a consequence that couldn't be resolved with, sorry, Mom. We went too far. They weren't dragged away in handcuffs like dangerous criminals. They were processed, identified, and released later. But there is now a report. And now, there's a case involving trespassing and damages. Plus the issue with the friend who had drugs and fake IDs. Which is a separate circus without source clowns. I came home the next day. The house was a disaster. Not destroyed to the point of looking like a hurricane had hit, but destroyed in that intimate way that hurts more. Stained rug. Broken glasses. Cigarette burn on my porch table. My bedroom disturbed. Documents out of place. My wine open and empty. My coat thrown on the laundry room floor, smelling like cigarettes and cheap perfume. And on the mirror in the guest bathroom, someone had written in lipstick, smile, smile. I laughed. But it was such an ugly laugh that even my cat left the room. Because sometimes the soul laughs so it doesn't leave the body and commit an administrative crime. My sister, Bianca, found out from my mother. Because, of course, family tragedy travels faster than an ambulance. She called me furious. She said I had overreacted. That kids do stupid things, that calling the police was something a mother should never do. That I could have traumatized the boys. The boys. Brandon is 22. Blake is 19. One of them has enough beard to look suspicious in a documentary. But when convenient, they become the boys. My ex-husband also called me. Benjamin, the Disneyland dad, finally showed up to give his opinion. He didn't show up to pay for therapy, school, window repairs, fines, nothing. But opinions? My God, he brought wholesale. He said, "You criminalize our sons." I replied, "No. They broke into a house." "I just called the people who deal with people breaking into houses," he said. "It was their mother's house." I said, "Exactly. And they still didn't respect it." He said I was being cold. That I should resolve this as a family. Funny how resolve this as a family always means the mother cleans everything, pays everything, forgives everything, and still makes coffee, and then came the bomb. Brandon sent me a huge message. Not apologizing, no, apologies must be endangered, along with shame and video rental stores. He wrote that I had destroyed his trust in me, that he never imagined his own mother would call the police on her sons, that now he might have problems at work if this showed up on a background check, that Blake was having anxiety, that I needed to fix the situation, double quotes, fixed out my house invaded, my bedroom violated, my belongings damaged, and I needed to fix it. I only replied, "You have 48 hours to return anything you took and send me a list of the damages you intend to pay for." He said, "So that's it. Money." I looked at the stained rug, the burned table, the photo of my mother lying on the floor, and thought, no, darling, money would be simple. This is respect cremated over low heat. Blake didn't reply at all. He just posted a vague social media jab. Toxic family is the kind that calls the police before talking. He said call them when I warn him. But apparently, in his version, I should have sent a registered letter, a bouquet, and maybe a UN mediator. Now my family is divided. My mother thinks I did the right thing. Barbara thinks I should have called sooner, back when they started eating my yogurt with a fork. My sister thinks I went too far. My ex thinks I'm a vengeful mother. Some friends say I did what was necessary. Others say that even though they were wrong, calling the police on your children is too much. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for calling the police on my own sons after they broke into my house and threw a party without my permission? Now, before the comments, I need to say this is one of those posts where the title seems designed to destroy op. I called the police on my children. It sounds awful. It sounds like a mother who measures love with a tape measure and a fine. But then you read the actual post and realize the babies are two adults breaking into a window, opening sentimental wine, and leaving behind a crime scene smelling like Axe body spray and irresponsibility. In the comments, Reddit obviously put on its helmet and entered the construction site. The top comment said, "NTA, you didn't call the police on your children. You called the police on intruders. The fact that the intruders came out of your uterus does not create a magical clause in criminal law." Another user wrote, "Your ex wants to resolve it as a family because he knows family means you paying the bill. Ask how much he's contributing toward the repairs. The call will probably drop, and honestly, that person should work in emotional weather forecasting because that is exactly what happened." There was also a comment saying, if they had permission, why did Blake run and jump the fence? Was he practicing nighttime athletics? And another one, the phrase "the house is ours too" is terrifying. Today it's a party. Tomorrow it's selling your stuff. After that, it's moving someone in. An ignored boundary always comes back carrying luggage. Some people disagreed. One wrote, "Yes, they were horrible, but police can escalate things. You should have called a relative to go there first," to which someone replied, "Which relative?" The aunt who thinks an adult man is a boy. The dad who only appears to defend vandalism. The elderly neighbor with 3 cats and night vision. One comment hit me hard. It said, "Op, your sons weren't testing a rule. They were testing whether you were still a person or just a maternal function." You responded as a person. That hurt, because that was exactly how I felt. Not like a mother, like an emotional appliance. A forgiveness machine. Something useful as long as it provides food, housing, money, and silence after a few hours. Op came back to answer questions. A lot of people asked whether she had proof that she warned her sons not to enter. She replied, "Yes, I have messages. I have a group message sent after I changed the locks, saying they did not have permission to enter without telling me and without authorization." Brandon replied with a thumbs up. Blake replied by calling me sheriff. I also have the camera recordings where I tell them to leave and Blake says call them. When I warn him I'm going to call the police. Perfect. Nothing like keeping receipts when you live near people who rewrite reality with crayons. People asked if they took anything. I replied, "I'm still checking. I noticed a watch that belonged to my father is missing, and so is an envelope with cash I was saving to pay for part of my mother's physical therapy. I don't want to accuse anyone without being sure, but the envelope was in my office drawer." And the camera shows one of Brandon's friends going in there with Blake. Then the mood, which already smelled like burning tires, got more interesting. Another user asked, "Are you going to keep the complaint?" Ob replied, "I don't know. Part of me wants to withdraw it because they're my sons. Another part of me thinks withdrawing it would teach the exact same lesson as always, that they can do anything to me and I'll still protect them from the consequences." And here's the third hook, the one that grabs the audience by the collar. Sometimes the question isn't do you love your children enough to forgive? Sometimes it's do you love yourself enough to stop offering yourself as the crime scene? 2 days later, I posted an update. I didn't expect as many responses. I read a lot of comments, cried, got angry, cried again, cleaned lipstick off the mirror, and discovered that cheap red lipstick has more staying power than my son's father. First, yes, I kept the report. I still haven't decided how far I'm going with everything, but I did not withdraw it. I spoke with an attorney and also with the police to understand what may happen. I'm not trying to send my sons to an underground prison guarded by dragons. I'm trying to create an official record of behavior that has been escalating for years. Second, Benjamin, my ex, kept pressuring me to fix this, so I did what one of the comments suggested. I sent him a preliminary list of damages with photos and asked how much he could contribute. He replied, "I'm not funding your revenge." I replied, "Then don't ask me to fund their impunity." Strangely, he stopped replying. Modern miracle. Someone called the Vatican. An opinionated man went silent. Third, Brandon came to my house yesterday. I didn't let him in. I spoke to him from the porch with the door locked. He looked drained. For the first time, he wasn't giving a speech. He said he wanted to talk. I said, "You can talk from there." He started by saying I had gone far. I told him if he came to repeat that, he could leave. Then he got quiet for a while and said, "I didn't think you would actually call." I replied. That was the problem. He started crying. He said the party wasn't supposed to be big. He said Blake invited more people. He said he tried to control it. I asked if controlling it included letting a stranger go into my bedroom and wear my coat. He went pale. He didn't know I had seen that. The camera, that sweet little gossiping angel, had been working. He apologized. It wasn't perfect. There were a lot of buts. I'm sorry. But you know Blake. I'm sorry, but I was drunk. I'm sorry. But we grew up in that house. I interrupted him and said an apology with "but" is just an escape attempt. Wearing remorse as a costume. Then he breathed and said, "I'm sorry. I disrespected you. I let other people disrespect you. I'm really sorry." That broke me a little. Because it was the Brandon I remembered before he became the junior attorney of his own ego. For a few seconds, I wanted to open the door. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to pretend one good sentence heals years of bad behavior. But I didn't open it. I told him he needed to return anything that was taken, pay for the damages, and seek therapy. He said he didn't steal anything. I said then he should help me figure out who did. That's when he got weird. I asked about the envelope with cash. He said he didn't know. I asked about my father's watch. He looked down. Then I knew. I asked, "Brandon, where's the watch?" He started crying again. He said Blake took it. He said Blake owed money to someone. He said the party wasn't just a party. Blake had invited people because he wanted to sell some of my things without me noticing. Small things. He said small things like he was talking about taking a cookie, not turning his mother's house into a pawn shop with ambient lighting. I felt my vision narrow. I asked if he knew this before they entered. Brandon said he knew Blake wanted to borrow money. I asked if borrow money meant break into a window and steal a grandfather's keepsake. He didn't answer. So I ended the conversation. I told him he had until the end of the day to send me everything he knew in writing. If he did it, I would hand over the footage and let the investigation continue. He shouted when I walked inside. Not from anger, from panic. He said, "Mom, Blake is going to be screwed." I turned and replied, "Blake is already screwed. He's just discovering the receipt." And that was the moment I realized my entire family had confused love with an insurance policy. Later, Brandon sent me a text, long for the first time, useful. He admitted Blake planned to enter because he knew I was traveling. He admitted that he, Brandon, went along because he thought it would be just one night, because he felt like I had abandoned them by changing the locks. He said Blake took the watch and the envelope. He named the friend who went into my office. He said he didn't know where the watch was now, but he would try to recover it. I forwarded everything to my attorney. My sister Bianca found out and called me crying. She said I was destroying Blake. I asked if she wanted to take him into her house. She said it wasn't that simple. Of course it wasn't. Boundaries always get complicated when the mess might land on the rug of the person giving the lecture. Then came Benjamin. Benjamin showed up in person. I didn't let him in. He stood at the entrance saying Blake was desperate, that he had gotten involved with bad people, that he needed help, not police. I asked, "Did you know about the debt?" He didn't answer. I asked again. He said Blake had asked him for money a few times. He gave it, then he stopped. Blake became aggressive. Benjamin said he didn't want to worry me. How kind. He let the problem grow in the dark, turn into mold, grow teeth, invade my house. All to protect my peace. A saint with bad wi-fee. I asked how much Blake owed. Benjamin said he wasn't sure. I asked if Blake used my house to pay off debt. Benjamin said, "Maybe he thought you had things you didn't use." I nearly laughed in his face. My family watch. My mother's physical therapy money. My house. My room. My coat. My things, apparently, are an emotional buffet for men who struggle to hear the word no. I asked Benjamin to leave. Today, Blake finally called me. He was crying. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't want it to get to this point. He said he would return the watch. He said he needed me to withdraw the complaint because if this continued, he could lose a job opportunity. I asked, "You have a job opportunity?" He said maybe. No. I asked where the watch was. He said a friend had it. I asked which friend. He said he couldn't say. I told him that I couldn't help. He became furious. His voice changed. The crime boy turned into the man who broke into my window. He said, "You're choosing things over your children," and I replied, "No, Blake, I'm choosing not to be robbed by my children." He hung up. Reddit. The update is, I'm keeping the report. I'll cooperate with the investigation. I'll try to recover the watch. I'm changing all the cameras, reinforcing the windows, and starting a formal order so they cannot enter my property without authorization. Brandon may be starting to understand. Blake still thinks consequences are persecution. I love my sons. That hasn't changed. But I'm starting to understand that loving someone doesn't mean standing still while that person uses a shovel to dig up your life and then asks you to thank them for the view. In the comments on the update, Reddit did what Reddit does best, brought empathy, judgment, and a concerning number of trash metaphors. One user wrote, "Your son isn't losing an opportunity because of the police. He's losing an opportunity because he robbed his own mother. The police didn't manufacture his choice." Another said, "Bianca has a house. Then Bianca can host Blake. Every relative who defends without offering a couch is just doing community theater." A third commented, "Benjamin knew there was debt and didn't warn you. That's not neutrality. That's lazy complicity." And there was one comment that was almost cruel. But that surgical kind of cruel, the kind that cuts where the infection already was up. "Your sons aren't afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing access to you." That stayed in my head. Access, because that was it. Access to the house. Access to money. Access to forgiveness. Access to the version of me that always opened the door even after being hurt. A week later, Up came back with the final update. Final update. The watch was recovered. Not by Blake, by Brandon. Brandon called me saying he knew where it was. He went to one of the friends' houses, threatened to tell the police everything if the watch didn't appear. And miraculously, the object turned up inside a drawer. Funny how stolen items sometimes grow little legs when they smell consequences. The watch is scratched, but whole. The money didn't come back. Blake admitted by text that he used it to pay part of the debt. He said he intended to return it. He also said I didn't need to act like he killed someone because in his mind, apparently, the moral standard begins at homicide. Anything below that is just Tuesday. The police now have the messages, videos, and names. My attorney said there will likely be alternative measures, maybe restitution, maybe an agreement, depending on how things proceed. I won't pretend I understand everything yet, but I'm not withdrawing anything just to make the family comfortable. And here comes the strangest part. Brandon asked to meet me at a coffee shop. Public place, his idea. He arrived on time, which by itself felt like a small divine intervention. He sat down, ordered coffee, stared at the table, and said, "I think I hate Blake a little." I said hate wouldn't help. He said, "It's not just him. I hate that we became this." The conversation was long. He said Benjamin always told them I was dramatic, that I controlled everything, that the house was the only stable thing in the family, and that because of that, they always felt entitled to it. Benjamin used to say, "Your mother will never leave you hanging." It sounds beautiful until you realize it was an elegant way of saying, "You can abuse her, she'll take it." Brandon admitted he liked being the son who knew how to handle me. Those were his words. Handle me, like I was an old security system he had learned how to disable. He cried when he said that. Not a performative cry. An ugly, quiet, ashamed cry. The rare kind that might actually be worth something. He said he would pay for half the damages, even if it took time. He also said he was going to seek therapy. I said that would be good, but it would not buy access back into my house. He agreed. Blake, on the other hand, moved in with Benjamin. Yes, the fun dad won the prize. The full package. The explosive son, the debt, the rage, the mess, the late-night calls. Finally, Benjamin received the full version of fatherhood without the edited trailer. 3 days later, Benjamin called me. I almost didn't answer, but I did because I'm curious and sometimes life offers dessert. He sounded exhausted. He said Blake had come home drunk, broken a chair, and money had disappeared from his wallet. He said he now understood that the situation was more serious. I stayed silent, he said. You could have warned me. I closed my eyes, breathed, thought of all the times I warned him. Thought of every you exaggerate. Every boys are like that. Every resolve it as a family. I thought of the lipstick on the mirror saying smile, and I replied, Benjamin. I called the police. That was the loudest warning I could give. He didn't like that, but he didn't argue either. My sister Bianca messaged asking if I was happy now that Blake was sinking. I replied, I'm not happy. I'm out of the water. She didn't answer. Blake still hasn't spoken to me since moving into his father's house. Brandon sends me updates about therapy. I don't know what will happen with our family. I don't know if I'll ever trust them again. I don't know if Blake will improve or if he'll turn Benjamin into his new walking wallet. I don't know if Brandon is changing or just scared, but I know this. My house is quiet. For the first time in years, the silence doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels like peace. I replaced the rug, fixed the table, washed the coat 3 times, and I can still smell some strange perfume on it. So, maybe I'll donate it. The bathroom mirror still has a faint mark where the lipstick was. You can only see it when the light hits from the side. I thought about replacing it. Then I decided to leave it for now, not as a reminder of the party, as a reminder that someone entered my house and told me to smile while disrespecting me. And I finally stopped smiling. So, am I the asshole? No, you get 0 out of 5 assholes. Your sons receive a score that would be higher if the scale accepted warehouse fire of common sense. Brandon may be trying to climb out of the hole. So, let's hand him a tiny spoon and see if he digs up or down. Blake is in the classic stage of confusing consequence with cruelty, also known as I tried adulthood and did not enjoy the terms. Benjamin gets 4 out of 5 assholes for outsourcing the parenting, sponsoring the narrative that you were exaggerating, and then acting surprised when the problem kicked down his door wearing dirty shoes. Bianca gets out of 5 for giving speeches without offering solutions. The Olympic sport of relatives who live far away from the fire, and a moral here. Because every domestic tragedy needs a venomous little plaque at the exit. It's simple. Sometimes the police don't enter the story because a mother stopped loving. They enter because everyone around her confused love with a license to invade, break, steal, and then ask for comfort. Family is not a free pass. Blood is not a spare key. And "but he's your son" cannot be the magic phrase that turns a crime into a misunderstanding. Now, I want to know, do you think she went too far by calling the police? Or was this exactly the consequence her sons needed to hear? Since apparently the language of "please respect my house" wasn't available in their brains.